Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Jenny, and today I want you to join me in welcoming Stacy Johnson from YouTube channel Surviving Shock. Hey, Stacy.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're here today, but before I start, a conversation, would you please introduce yourself to everyone in the way that includes details so they know more about you?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Stacy Johnson. I am a woman empowerment coach and I empower selfless uh, working women who are overwhelmed and have gone through some life-altering event that has created what I call that shock, that event that has changed their life and they're overwhelmed, their nervous system is dysregulated, and they want to break free from overthinking and make confident decisions so that they have more clarity and their relationships are more connected
Right,
and they're they're working without, bringing everything home. They just have more clarity and are more purposeful in their life.
right. I mean, when you say shock, the big shock, like I know for me, the biggest I mean it's hard to say the biggest, but I guess the thing that comes to my mind first is the biggest shock was when my dad committed suicide. Like, you know, death is one of those like the biggest shock. And I
Right.
know, is there, I know your story a little bit. You want to tell us like about your big shock?
Yeah. My big shock was in 2021 when I went through the like 3.5 weeks of hell, is what I'm gonna say. It started
Wow.
off with a phone call at work one morning on a Friday morning. My mom tried to get a hold of me and I didn't get the phone call. So then my husband called the office and was like, your mom needs you. Your stepfather is not responding and they've taken him to the hospital. And he's like, let me know where they are and I'll meet you. So, we get to this hospital, and yes, my stepfather did not respond. He did not wake up that morning. That evening, after we got through everything, and it took me about 3 hours to get my mom out of the hospital room after everybody was there, and we got home, and she went into AFib. She couldn't get her blood pressure regulated. So my brother and I took her back to the emergency room. And we went to the one that was specifically related for her because, which was a little bit further of a drive, but it was the one where all of her doctors were. We literally walked in the emergency room. And of course, this was when COVID was still pretty high and the
Yeah.
emergency room was packed. They said that I could not go back with her. And she says, I'm not staying. And she turned around and left. And so I followed her out. We get back in my brother's car and we go back to the hospital where my stepfather had been. And they allowed us in because of the circumstances, because the nurses had just been with us in that morning.
Wow.
So they
Right.
let us go. And she was basically having the signs of a heart attack. And we had to admit her to the hospital. Then she was able to be released the next morning, basically because the doctor was like, she's not actively, but it was like her system, again, amazing what our nervous system can do to us. Her system mimicked a heart attack, but since she is a heart patient, they really wanted to keep her. And she was like, no, I need to get home. Now that her brain was clearer,
Wow.
she was like, no, I need to go home and start preparing for services.
Oh,
But then after her service, they ran some tests or after his services, they ran a test on a Monday. His service was Tuesday morning. She was back at the hospital having her test, and they decided that they needed to put a stent in. So she was admitted to the hospital that day. My husband was diagnosed with COVID. And then, so I was at the hospital all day with her, figuring out what I'm doing, telling my daughters, like, get your dad's fluids, do whatever you need to do to make sure his COVID is being managed at home. A week
right.
later, his symptoms did not seem to be getting any better. But then, well, Monday night, my mom called me in the middle of the night and said, I'm in AFib. I need to go back to the emergency room. So I left the house, took her to the hospital, got no sleep, came home, and then decided that he needed to go to the emergency room because he was not any better. Like his COVID symptoms had kind of tanked. He was couldn't even keep his eyes open for like five minutes. We get to the hospital and they
Oh my
tell me he's
God.
got COVID, double COVID pneumonia, and he needed to be admitted to ICU. And then a week and a half later, he had passed. So in that 3.5 weeks, like I said, that was my shock. It was you know, I don't even know how I'm still here, to be honest, because there was
Yeah.
just so much. And that's when, you know, after he passed away and after I got through his services, I really was like, I can't live I can't live in this kind of overwhelmed. I still was working full time. I had two kids that were adults, 17 and 20, but they still
Yeah.
needed their mom. And I
Yeah.
needed to figure out how I had to get past this storm. So I had doubled down on a lot of the skills that I had learned through the years of being a therapist. And that's when I decided I wanted to help other women like this.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry you went through all that for one. And for two, yeah, the shock, like the word says, like shock, but your whole nervous system like blows up, like, blah, to you're on high alert, you're
Hmm.
hypersensitive and hyper aware of things, and yet brain fog and you don't know anything. It's very confusing. It's like so crazy because it sounds like conflicting things going on. Like you're uber aware of everything, you're on high alert, but at the same time, like you're not able to do. I don't know how you functioned. I really don't know how you functioned in that time.
When I look back at it and I talk about it, I don't know how I did either. But
Yeah.
then, he passed away, unfortunately, the day before Thanksgiving. So we got through the holidays, and at the time I was working for a school. So I had taken all the time off until the first of the year. And I went back to work January, basically 2nd. And I don't know how I even did that. Like I think about it and I'm like, how did I do that? And I'm like, I had to. One, I had
Yeah.
to. I knew I needed to get back into my routines. But then when I really started to like sit with my emotions more, really identify what was I feeling, and then I stopped this overthinking pattern because I was stuck for a little while of like, should I have called his doctor sooner? Should I have taken the emergency room sooner? Should I have done this? Should I have done that?
Oh, all
What
the
if this?
second
What if that?
guessing. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh,
And,
yeah.
and it was like, I kept, and I'm like, no, I can't live like this. I can't live like this for myself because staying stuck in those patterns was definitely not really who I was to begin with.
Hmm.
And I knew that I had to, for my kids' sake, and really it I did notice a difference because we have this great connection. We talk pretty much about anything now. And it was about, I would say, 6 months or so after, because I had to get my kid off to college too. Like she was a senior that year. So I had to work on all the financial aid stuff, change obviously all the finances had changed from two
Yeah.
incomes to one. And when we got it all done, she was like, Mom, thank you. Like, thank you for showing us that we can experience a shock and still live ourselves. Like, we can find the tools to be able to do the things that we still want to accomplish in life and be
Right.
successful at it.
Right. Because I gotta imagine that it must be like there's people that experience the shocking event and, are not, there's a period of processing and stuff, and they're not ready to move on quite. And then there's other people like, no, I just want to get back to how I need to be because I can't keep going like this. And I'm done with the processing, but I mean, I'm not done with the processing, but I want to be. Or like, is that the differentiation between people who are ready to work with you and people who are not ready to work with you?
Yeah, I think so. I've had a couple friends that have experienced shocking events and they were nowhere near being ready.
Yeah.
One, you know, has been, was drank, used unhealthy coping skills,
Right.
you
Right.
know, and others, I've had a client of mine that she said it took me 8 months to even think about getting out of bed. It was a
Yeah.
good day if I got out of bed and took a shower.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they weren't ready, and it wasn't until that turning point that they were like, okay, I can't continue to live in my bed. That's
Yeah,
not
I
living.
don't want to keep doing this. Yeah. And see with the younger kids, like they have that, you always hear the younger ones are more resilient because they don't have all the attachments yet that I'm not saying not loving their dad or anything, but they don't she was like, I want to go off to college and I still want to do that. I don't want to not what am I
Mhm.
doing if I don't get to do that? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm going to be honest that my one child races dirt bikes and four-wheelers, and that was her passion that she learned with her dad. The day after his service, the two of us got in his pickup truck and put her four-wheeler in, and we went to a race because
Wow.
that's all we knew. That's all she knew.
Right.
I had gone as a participant or a watcher. I was the one that had the camera. I didn't have to do any of the kind of stuff. But that day I was like, I got to figure out how I'm getting that four-wheeler to the race. I got to sign her up and I got to do all this other stuff that dad
Right.
always took care of. And that season, she went back to nationals at the end of February. And here I was renting vans to get her four-wheeler there because we no longer could use a trailer. So I was doing things that I never did before, but I wouldn't
Right.
take it back. Like that's what we knew, and that I knew for her regulated her nervous system was to be
Right.
on a four-wheeler.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's interesting. I mean, and when we talk about shock, like there's just so many. I mean, people dying is to me it's like one of the biggest ones, but there's also people like losing a job.
yeah,
Um, whether it's
divorce.
you divorce, you're laid off, um, or people like marriages, like someone's cheating on you and they leave, like, or they're cheating on you and they want to stay. I mean, so many shocking
Right.
things, right?
Get, getting getting diagnosed with a medical, you know, uh,
Yes.
like a disease or, an illness, or even having a family member and then now becoming the caregiver
Oh my
as
gosh,
well
I have
as,
3 clients right now experiencing this. Their event is that their life isn't their own anymore, that they have to
mm-hmm,
literally take care of someone in a way that they in fact all 3 of them are not moms. They're all 3 women having to take care of elderly parents
uh-huh,
and at home, like not, and it's like they don't even identify as caretakers. Like they weren't moms who turned into caretaker, they were like
right, right.
independent as you can be. And now all of a sudden, like, oh, now I have to take care for the person that raised me. Like it's an interesting, but it is shocking because it's disorienting
Mhm.
and you don't know who you
Yeah,
are anymore. And which is like a huge, so I think any kind of shock that has you feeling like you don't even know who you are anymore, or so you are talking about able to jump into some routines and stuff. I mean, I guess not everybody can do that though. You know what I'm saying?
right, right. Yeah,
I know it took
yeah, like,
me like 10 years to get to where I felt like I kind of processed a lot of the grief and could kind of start to forgive and move on. But like
yeah,
it was
yeah.
long,
One of
long,
my
long.
clients, it was at least a year before, she found herself getting back into the routines, but she also spent, some of that time before then fearing doing doing things too, like going to the grocery store. Like there was so much overthinking on just,
Yeah.
daily things that it became hard for her to just do daily routines.
And you cannot trust yourself to make good decisions too. Like there's that whole confidence,
Mhm.
there's overthinking. And I mean, there's so much that goes, when we talk about like tangible results and intangible results, and it's like all the intangible stuff, like the confidence, like you said, clarity, like all those things people want, they don't realize how badly they need them because they always think about the things they can hold in their hand, like, oh, I need more money, or oh, I need a relationship, or, something they can hold, or measure, like I need my heart rate to go down, right? How do you measure overwhelm? Like it's so intangible.
Right, right. For me, like even before my husband passed, I had a lot of overthinking. And it was one day when I was like, this even before he passed, but even during that time, just walking from my kitchen to upstairs, I didn't remember why I went upstairs. Like, why did I come up here for? Like, I came up here for a reason, but why?
Yeah.
And once I was able to clear out all of the clutter and the overthinking, I was amazed. Like, before I thought I was in the early signs of dementia, you know,
You're like, oh,
like,
that's all this is.
and then all of a sudden it was like, as I did more of that work for myself, I realized like now I can remember all of that short-term stuff, like walking up the stairs. I'm like, yeah, now it's very clear for me. And now I don't worry that I'm having early signs because my grandmother passed, 10 years ago or so with dementia. And so I truly thought that this is just in my genes and this is what's going to happen to me. And
Wow.
and then now I'm like, no, I'm not, I don't worry about that. I mean, because
Right.
I'm not seeing those concerns right now. And that's the kind of clarity that I got by stopping the overthinking and, clearing out the cobwebs.
Yeah, I know that you've told me that you have this Illumination Toolkit. If you give me the link, I'll put it down below for everybody because I think that's
Okay.
kind of like the big, like you shine a light on certain things to get the real like clarity needed to move past this overthinking. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, the first step was looking at what is triggering this big overwhelming feeling for you.
Mhm.
And, that's our first step is to kind of shine the light on what is causing all of that. And then there's
Right.
a lot of processes that kind of go into the overthinking, stopping that overthinking piece.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I mean, that's so even if you found yourself in a where you might not think it's an event, that's the other thing, right? Some people live in a state of constant chaos. It's like that low simmer chaos. I know as an ADHD coach, like some people just have a life where it's just very not routine. It seems like they're just reacting, reacting, reacting. Oh, we gotta do this. Oh, let's go do that. What? Oh, yeah, let's go do that. And that can also probably benefit from like, well, it's not a shocking event. It's, I always call it lurching from crisis to crisis, which
Right.
is your nervous system is the same as if you went through a shocking event.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're one of those people, this would help too. So I guess my question
Yes.
is this for
Yes.
people
Because
that also like,
one of my clients right now, the first thing she said was to me was that, I've got anxiety, but I also have ADHD. And I'm like, it's okay. We will, we will still be able to, I will still be able to help you, you know. And so, yeah.
that's
Uh,
cool. Excellent. Okay. So are you doing anything coming up? Because I would like to try to, promote anything that you're actively doing.
Yeah. I mean, again, I mean, that illumination toolkit is my big piece right now. And with that comes illumination session where I personalize the toolkit
Oh, nice.
with a client. They will meet with me and we'll personalize that toolkit for them. So that's a 30-minute session that will personalize it, and we will kind of start to look at what are the first signs of overwhelm and the triggers, and then they'll get some journaling prompts, and then I ask them to come back and we kind of discuss kind of what they learned from that toolkit.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's very cool. And
Mhm.
that's free?
Yes, that's free.
Nice, nice. And I'm also going to put your channel down below so that people can go check you out too, because that's where you
Okay.
go find her. Go subscribe to Surviving Shock and all the things. And Stacy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And
Thank
I
you.
think, you know, the more that we get people talking about the shocking things that they go through and the overwhelm and the overthinking and stuff, that there is relief. Relief is available.
Right. So many people, especially I think in our generation, we there's this sense that we can't talk about it. We just don't talk about feelings and we don't talk about the events that have caused the shock. We just have to figure it out ourselves. And
Yeah.
sometimes that stuffing of those feelings because we've never talked about them, they eventually explode in your face. Like you just can't do it. And so I think our generation is the ones that have found that like we may have these shocking events, but we just keep going and going and going,
Yeah.
and
That's a
it
Gen
it
Xer
doesn't
right
work
there,
out.
man. A Gen Xer is like, oh well, brush it off and keep going. And it's like, no, no. If you brush it off and keep
Right,
going, you're not actually gonna probably get to where you want to go. You're probably gonna go down a kind of
right.
a worse path. That's why I said, like, for
Yeah,
me, for 10 years with my dad's, that the aftermath of that, was too long. Like I should have been in some therapy or something. I didn't know, like it was just, and I would not want
it
anyone to go through 10 years. Like it's not necessary.
right. Right. Yeah. I'm glad that, and like I said, it wasn't, I didn't realize how resilient I had been until it was like my daughter said, Mom, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for, working so hard to manage and get out of that overwhelm. Like she
Yeah.
didn't see me, stuck. She saw us kind of
Well,
still
and that's a
like
good,
make
you've got other people that depend on you to pull it together if
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. We and we recognize that just because we had that big, shocking event doesn't mean we can't have the life that we dreamed of having,
Right.
so
Yeah. That's a message of resilience right there. Boom, drop the mic. Yes, have the life you want anyway, right? Yeah,
right,
I love
right.
that. All right, well, I'll definitely love to see what, as you continue, have you back and share some more stuff. But everybody go to her channel and I will see you later. All right,
All right.
thanks. Bye.
Bye.